new crew at the space station, some science on the next SpaceX resupply mission, and testing Orion's parachutes. A few of the stories to tell you about this week at NASA.
Steady as she goes, the Soyuz spacecraft continuing its fly around of the International Space Station.
Our astronauts Drew Feustel and Ricky Arnold and Russia's Oleg Artemyev arrived safely at the International Space Station on March 23rd after a successful launch 2 days earlier from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The Expedition 5556 crew will work on hundreds of experiments during their 5-month stay on the orbiting microgravity laboratory. The next SpaceX resupply mission to the space station is set to launch April 2nd from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. Included in the 5,800 pounds of crew supplies, hardware, and research is an Earth observatory that will study severe thunderstorms and their role in Earth's atmosphere and climate, an investigation on bone marrow that could benefit future space explorers as well as humans on Earth, and a study on the production of high-performance products from metal powders, which could lead to improved manufacturing techniques. NASA successfully tested the Orion spacecraft's parachute system on March 16th at the U.S. Army Proving Ground in Yuma, Arizona. It was the first time engineers intentionally failed one of the system's 3 forward bay cover parachutes. The forward bay cover protects the upper part of Orion throughout its mission, but must be jettisoned during landing so the rest of Orion's parachutes can deploy. A team of engineers at our Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, have developed and tested a new 3D printing technique that can greatly reduce the cost and time needed to make rocket engine nozzles. This new technology could reduce manufacturing time from several months to several weeks, and is now being licensed and considered in commercial applications across the industry. Spacecraft AR is a new mobile lab produced by our Jet Propulsion Laboratory in collaboration with Google that uses the latest augmented reality technology to put virtual 3D models of NASA's robotic spacecraft into any environment with a flat surface. The initial version of the app is available for Android devices with plans to add other devices in the future. That's what's up this week at NASA. For more on these and other stories, follow us on the web at nasa.gov/twan.
Imagine for a moment you're in the Army pursuing a great career. Suddenly your life is changed forever. Maybe it was a combat wound, a malignant diagnosis with a poor outcome, or an injury during a training exercise at the National Training Center at Fort Irwin, California. In the coming weeks, it becomes clear that your Army career has been cut short. Your wound, ailment, or injury is so severe you'll no longer be able to continue your military service to this great nation in uniform. For some who may be soldiers in the Army for many years, or for others it could be an event that happens 2 years into their Army career. Regardless, this is where the Army Wounded Warrior Program, AW2 Advocate, or the Recovery Care Coordinator, RCC, will engage each and every soldier.
I'm Colonel T.J. Johnson, Director of the Army's Wounded Warrior Program. The focus of this video is to ensure you have an understanding of what you have serving you in regards to the Army Wounded Warrior Program known as AW2. I'd like to tell you a little bit about this program and to make sure you have a quality understanding as you move forward on your journey. The AW2 program is a congressionally mandated program that takes care of the nation's and specifically the Army's severely wounded, ill, and injured soldiers and their caregivers. It is specifically designed to handle complex issues, to break down bureaucracy, and any systems or organizations that might service the soldier and those caregivers. Now, we do this through a series of about 167 extremely well-trained, very mature advocates that are stationed around the United States and around the world. Now, through them, we handle a myriad of issues. Listen to the assistance given to our former AW2 director, Colonel David Esker.
On July 28th of 2011, I had the unfortunate experience of being involved in close combat with my soldiers that ended up with 2 suicide bombers igniting on us. Fortunately, we all came out alive that day, but we were seriously wounded. The system that the United States Army has in place, that the nation has mandated that they have in place, cared for us beautifully. It put us back together physically. As we went through our various journeys in the hospitals, whether it was Launch or Walter Reed or down in San Antonio. What we didn't fully understand at that time was all of the other entities that were surrounding us to ensure that we recovered mentally and spiritually, not just physically. Those other entities happen to also include the AW2 Advocate. I can honestly say from personal experience that the AW2 Advocate is the one thing that ensured that my family was squared away, and that all of the logistics and nuanced details that we weren't paying attention to because of the severity of my wounds, they were being paid attention to by that advocate. I can't thank an individual or a system more for the care and compassion that it had, and then the sheer maturity and intelligence that it exhibited on a daily basis to solve my problems and to solve the problems of my family.
Regardless of rank or years of service, the sudden change of career trajectory stirs within a person feelings of confusion, uncertainty, and the possibility of despair. Who will help them navigate a medical evaluation board? Who should they turn to in order to determine what benefits are awaiting them due to their time in service? For the healthiest of people, all the jargon of medical, financial, and personnel benefits are overwhelming to comprehend. The Army recognized this, and shortly after the terrorist attacks of September 2001, the Army created what has become the Army Wounded Warrior AW2 program. With AW2 advocates positioned throughout the nation, soldiers who've been medically retired with combat-related injuries have a resource they can use to help with their transition into medically retired status.
The Recovery Care Coordinator is a specific mandate from Congress to the United States Army through the United States Army Medical Command to ensure all those soldiers assigned to the Warrior Transition Unit have advocacy. All those soldiers, not just those who meet AW2 criteria. Any soldier entering the Warrior Transition Unit will have an advocate that will work on their behalf to ensure their issues are specifically addressed, and any executive agency issues like Social Security, Veterans Administration, or the Department of Labor issues can be handled maturely and quickly to a successful resolution.
I'm grateful to have been able to meet my AW2 advocate, be able to use the programs, gain the knowledge, and I still share. I talk about AW2 with everyone.
One of the ways I was able to stay in the military was through the COAD program, which is continuation on active duty. And me being amputee, I was automatically found unfit for military duty. But with the COAD program, it allowed me to stay in to be able to continue my military career and still be able to do the things I wanted to do.
Eligibility and criteria requirements for entry into the program are as follows. A soldier must have sustained wounds, illness, or injuries incurred in the line of duty, LOD, after 10 September 2001 and have received or are expected to receive at least a 30% Army disability rating from the Integrated Disability Evaluation System, IDES, for one of the following 7 non-combat related conditions: blindness or loss of vision, loss of limb, hearing loss or deafness, burns or permanent disfigurement, paralysis or spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, TBI, or a fatal or incurable disease with a limited life expectancy of 1 year or less, or receive a 30% IDES Army disability rating for any other combat-related condition, or condition caused by an instrumentality of war, including PTSD and other behavioral health conditions, or received a combined 50% IDES Army disability rating for any other combat-related conditions or conditions caused by an instrumentality of war.
The lead coordinator is a responsibility all our advocates have, and this responsibility has been created between the Department of Defense and the Veterans Affairs Administration. The lead coordinator has the responsibility of taking care of our constituents when they retire or when they leave active service or the reserve component, and to hand it over to the Veterans Administration. And it's done in a very responsible manner. So that lead coordinator ensures that all the issues that our constituents may have that are properly passed over and handed over to the lead coordinator to the Veterans Administration.
For me, everybody's involved because everybody's transitioning. Not just a soldier, everybody's transitioning.
I think the AW2 program is about reaching out to not just the soldier but the family, because when a soldier is going through something, that family is important too, and that family needs to also feel included in what's going on.
We're here to help you transition, you and your family. So I always go with letting them know it's not just about them, it's about their family.
Army Wounded Warrior Alumni Program, or AWOP, was put into place because we've taken care of over 28,000 severely wounded, ill, and injured soldiers over the past 12 years. Some of those soldiers have graduated to a level of independence where they no longer need us to engage them directly. This program was designed to ensure that they know that they always have help when they need it. All they have to do is call.
From injury to transition to civilian life, the AW2 advocate will be by each and every soldier's side every step of the way to advise and advocate for them and all their transitional needs until a warm handoff is accomplished with the Department of Veterans Affairs.
AW2 is a resource.
AW2 is a lifesaver.
It's safe. It's being safe. Knowing somebody got your back.
I'm Cass Green, and I'm president of Cass Green & Associates, and I do consulting on remote sensing, policy, and also mapping projects. Usually we've been classifying Landsat imagery just pixel by pixel, which was fine at the moderate resolution of Landsat imagery. When you start getting the high resolution imagery, there's lots of noise. So it's really wonderful to work with a 6-inch pixel when I've got airborne imagery, but then I've got pixels of the bright side of the trees and pixels of the dark side of the trees and pixels in between the trees. So we moved to object-oriented classification, and what that means is you have an algorithm that draws circles around the pixels or polygons around the pixels, and then you classify that polygon instead of the individual pixels. You know, the bad side of that is the high resolution imagery is always spectrally limited. It doesn't have the mid-infrared, doesn't have the thermal. It's also really expensive, so you don't get multi-temporal imagery. Landsat, it's every 16 days. So what we do now is we take the objects and we intersect them with the Landsat data. So we've got the high resolution spectral response, but then we get the Landsat spectral response. And then we put multi-temporal Landsat data in there. So bringing those together, it's really powerful. I've been making high resolution maps for probably over 10 years now. Every single project, when you look at the important variables, Landsat's still one of the top 10 variables. AROS is doing an incredible job with the archive. To see what it was like at the beginning and how it has changed now, I mean, it's so much bigger, for one. They got those old MSS tapes, got all the archives in all the different countries, so we have a worldwide archive. I mean, the AROS's archive, not just Landsat, AROS's archive with all the different imagery is really impressive, and it's the only place in the world that you can get this kind of data, because that's where it all lives. Well, as part of the Landsat Advisory Group, we did a study where we looked at what would be the cost of losing Landsat data, and we looked at 16 different programs, and I think we came up with a figure of $1.8 billion a year if Landsat wasn't there. So these were mostly government programs that are doing their work, and we asked them, if you didn't have Landsat, how much would it cost you every year to do what you're doing? And some groups came back and said we couldn't do what we're doing. It's more valuable now because it's free and open, so organizations can rely on it. They can rely on it being there. I think Landsat's healthier now as a program than it's ever been, and that is because it's so widely used. I've been involved in promoting Landsat since the early 1990s, and I was involved in the 1992 Act that brought Landsat back to the government. Landsat, made my career, so I feel like I owe a lot back to Landsat. So I speak about it every chance I can, from lobbying to giving interviews, anything I can do to promote Landsat, because I think it's a critical Earth resource. It's that 44 years of continuity, all those pictures of the Earth and of the high quality, the high calibrated imagery across the whole spectrum. We just don't have anything else like that. It's the record of what we're doing to the world, of natural hazards, natural disasters. We keep making more people. We're not making any more land. That means that resources are more and more valuable. And Landsat helps us both inventory those resources and monitor change over time. And as those resources continue to get more valuable, we desperately need a Landsat type system that monitors our resources.
March 28, 1979. The accident at the Unit 2 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant was a searing crisis for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the plant's owner, and most especially residents near TMI-2, southeast of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. 4 days of confusion and panic only subsided when President Jimmy Carter visited the site on April 1st. 8 days later, Governor Richard Thornburg canceled the evacuation of pregnant women and children, local schools reopened the next day, and the scores of reporters who rushed to the scene went home. The crisis was over. Living with TMI's consequences was another matter. I'm Tom Wellock, historian for the NRC. The crisis lasted 4 days, but it took 14 years to clean up TMI's damaged reactor and contaminated buildings. Neither the NRC nor the nuclear industry were well prepared to begin the cleanup. A year after the accident, progress was stalled by financial questions, lawsuits, regulatory uncertainty, technical problems, and miscommunication. To solve these problems, the NRC had to become a stronger advocate for the cleanup's importance, and it developed a more open and cooperative relationship with other government agencies, the nuclear industry, and citizen groups. The accident not only damaged a reactor, it damaged the credibility of the NRC and the plant's owner, General Public Utilities, known as GPU. The NRC was a relatively new agency in 1979, but opponents of nuclear power had already criticized it for lax regulation and secretive behavior. And the accident led to accusations that GPU and the NRC had acted incompetently, even dishonestly during the crisis. The agency had to oversee the cleanup under a cloud of mistrust. That mistrust was soon evident as cleanup operations met resistance over radiation hazards. Whether it was solid, liquid, or gas, contamination that had to be removed or released from TMI understandably increased public alarm. Several controversies raised the specter that TMI's radioactive wastes might become prisoners on the island. State governors blocked low-level waste shipments from TMI to commercial disposal sites in South Carolina and Washington State, which required extensive efforts by the NRC to reassure them that TMI waste was safe. The NRC was also caught off guard when the city of Lancaster sued to halt the discharge of accident-contaminated water into the Susquehanna River, from which the city drew its drinking water. The NRC argued that the filtered water would be decontaminated to the same purity as discharges from operating reactors. But the city demanded a public environmental impact statement on all facets of the cleanup. Opposition to river discharge grew, and in early 1980, the NRC agreed to find a different technical solution. A crisis point came in early 1980 when a small amount of radioactive krypton gas inadvertently escaped from TMI into the atmosphere. In small quantities, krypton is routinely discharged from operating plants. But for Pennsylvania residents who had lived for a year with the stress and uncertainty of the damaged plant, the incident was too much. At angry public meetings, residents accused the utility and the NRC of lying and operating under a cloak of secrecy. Robert Reed, mayor of nearby Middletown, pleaded, "We want someone in there to tell us the truth, someone we can put faith in." With distrust growing, an NRC task force warned, without local public acceptance of the cleanup operation at TMI-2, an orderly and expeditious cleanup will be difficult, if not impossible, to accomplish. Public fears and stress can be expected to persist until the plant is cleaned up. The NRC responded with initiatives to involve the public in cleanup operations. Nuclear power critics were consulted on the best means to vent the krypton gas, which was done in June 1980. To provide an independent source of information, local residents received training through a Department of Energy program in radiation monitoring and data recording. The NRC also formed a citizen advisory panel that met every quarter for 13 years, providing local communities with an effective channel of communication with both the NRC and the utility. The NRC established a well-staffed project office at the site to allow for a more decentralized and efficient cleanup, and it completed an environmental impact statement that set out safety criteria for all cleanup operations. As the NRC resolved regulatory issues, technical questions still loomed. GPU needed assistance with the cleanup, and the damaged reactor offered important opportunities for safety research. The NRC persuaded the Department of Energy to commit the expertise of its national laboratories to research and cleanup support. The Department of Energy also provided disposal sites for highly contaminated equipment and storage of the damaged fuel. Under the watchful eyes of NRC inspectors, cleanup operations moved forward. On July 23, 1980, utility workers made the first post-accident entry into the reactor containment building. Over the next year, plant staff collected data and prepared to decontaminate systems and buildings and remove the reactor fuel. GPU's hopes that it could refurbish and restart TMI-2 rested on finding only limited damage to its fuel assemblies. Uranium fuel pellets are inserted into thin 12-foot tubes. The tubes are bound into assemblies, and hundreds of assemblies are packed together to make up what is called the reactor core, where the nuclear chain reaction takes place. On July 21, 1982, more than 3 years after the accident, the utility got its first look at the core. Personnel lowered a camera probe into an opening to inspect the core. At the top of the core, they anticipated the camera would find damaged but mostly intact assemblies. There was nothing there but murky water. As a technician called out its progress to his astonished coworkers, the camera plunged deep into a large empty void.
They're going down. Both cables are going down. We're now 2 feet into the core. We're now approaching 3 feet. We are approaching 4 feet. It's 5 feet down. Hey, go slow right there. See if we can get that. All right, let me slow down here. Just slow. We've got so much light. Can we? Warm. Beautiful picture, Noman. Well, I'd love to know what the hell it is.
What that was, investigations showed, was rubble. A bed of shattered fuel assemblies more than a foot thick. Below it was a hardened mass of melted fuel and other metals. Later inspections revealed some melted fuel even flowed to the bottom of the reactor vessel. In all, about half the reactor fuel had disintegrated or melted down. Talk of restarting the reactor ended, and the workers turned to permanent decommissioning. The NRC worked with the nuclear industry and the Department of Energy to develop procedures, tools, and equipment to remove the damaged fuel and transport it in specially designed casks to Idaho National Laboratory for temporary storage. And rather than river disposal, the filtered accident water was evaporated and the solid residues disposed of in a low-level waste facility. In 1993, TMI-2 was placed in monitored storage, where its remaining radioactivity will decay to lower levels until complete decommissioning is scheduled in accordance with NRC regulations. Like the accident itself, the TMI cleanup was a unique challenge to the NRC. The long cleanup was a source of great stress to local communities, and the NRC learned from their residents that regulating required more than making technically sound decisions. It requires substantive public involvement. Today, the NRC draws on lessons that helped turn around the TMI cleanup, by communicating about decommissioning in public forums and encouraging participation in citizen advisory panels for power reactor decommissioning. Ensuring adequate protection of the public is a very public business.
A hero, someone who risks their lives to save others.
Sacrificing everything and doing everything it takes to help another.
A hero is someone who does what has to be done without regards to their own safety.
Someone who's willing to lay it all on the line. Even when they're scared, they give it all they got.
A hero is someone who faces danger for the greater good.
A hero to me is somebody who's willing to step up not because they're asked to, but simply because they know it's the right thing to do.
A hero is someone who would give up their freedoms, their safety, for your freedoms, for your safety.
Se lo agradezco mucho.
Llegó migración, yo les pedí ayuda, me dieron agua, sabía que ellos me iban a ayudar.
Una persona extraordinaria que lucha para salvar este gran país.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Carla Provost, Acting Chief of the U.S. Border Patrol. Since 1924, United States Border Patrol agents have worked tirelessly every day to protect our borders and ensure national security. We adapt, we improvise, and we get the job done.